Hi, everybody, and welcome back to I'll Bring the Biscuits, the show where we talk about the world of care. We talk about the difficult choices you have to make when looking for care, but we do it all over a packet of biscuits. Today, I am really excited. I am joined by the director of the RZM Group, Zoe March. Now, the RZM Group are a multi-franchise owner and operator of Home Instead franchises. Zoe, hello.
Hi, Tom. You all right?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Thank you very much for joining me. So, just before we get started, really in the in-depth conversation, did I get it right? RZM and multiple Home Instead branches.
Yes, that's it. So with the RZM, I think the official name is RZM Holdings Limited, and it's myself and my partner, Robert Moore, and we've got 5 home instead offices across South Yorkshire and North Nottinghamshire.
Excellent. So, a big area that is covered. So, plenty of clients that you work with, right?
Absolutely, yeah. When I looked at the map of our territory the other day, I was actually surprised quite how big it is. Some territories are nice and neat. They're like Rotherham's neat, Wakefield's neat, but then Castleford and Selby is such a vast rural territory, and then the Retford and Gainsborough one as well. It's huge in comparison. So when we're considering the challenges that we have day to day, they're actually very different per territory,
I imagine,
like
yes.
logistical.
Yeah, well, I can just envision a map on your wall and slowly everything's getting coloured in by the RZM group and what's under your control, like an invading force of loving care.
A little bit Dad's Army, yeah.
We've already mentioned it. You're owner operator of Home Instead franchises. So, what brought you to the world of care?
So I fell into the role. It wasn't something that I was thinking as a teenager or at university thinking I really need to get into care. That's a passion that I've got. I fell into it. So Rob, my partner, he bought the Home Instead Doncaster office and he operated that for about 5 years before I joined the Doncaster office in the beginning. I'd been on maternity leave with our second child from 2019 onwards. And then in 2020, well, 2019, 2020, pandemic hit. I was at the time working at Aviva, so in the pensions department. And at the time of me potentially coming back off maternity leave, they were asking a lot of people to work from home. And so I'd already spent a lot of time at home, and I knew that Rob was able to get out of the house and go and make a difference. I thought, absolutely, that's something that I'd love to do. I think me and Rob discussed it, what I'd be able to add to the business. My passion is always detail, focus, and quality. So the conversations that we were having were, "Are you planning to go back to Aviva?" And I thought, well, I did enjoy my job. I liked my team. I'm not a huge people person, which is probably a surprise working in care. But I just love the detail and the quality. So that's where my passion lies. And I thought, I'm sure I can make a difference in this business. And that's where we are now.
I must say, detail and quality are probably, you don't necessarily put them on your banner, but that's something you definitely really want from a care provider.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and Rob are a good double act. So he's very much business strategy, networking. He's very charming, very personable. And I'm very much behind the scenes, digging out the detail, looking at the auditing. And there's a running joke in our group that I'll pull a thread and I won't be able to stop until I've got to the end of that ball of thread, or I'll start digging a hole, fall into a black hole of data, and then I'll come out the other end with a process change that we need to go through. So that's where I find joy.
Well, I mean, and I'm sure all your clients will love to hear that that is where you find joy because essentially what you're saying is you really like making the service better.
Exactly, that's it. So on a daily basis, I'll be saying to everyone in the office that any decision that I'm making, it's to the benefit of the client or the care pro or the key players. So I'm never making a decision just because that's the way I think it should happen. It's always built on the regulations. It's always built on policies that National Office at Home Instead have. So if I feel I'll get a hunch, or a niggle that something's not quite where it needs to be, and that's when I start pulling the threads and looking in. and changing the processes.
That's how I sort of like to operate as well. And I think that is the way that you can ensure that as a business, you remain focused on your goal, right? And the goal for yourself, for Rob, and I think I can speak for Home Instead as a whole, is to deliver outstanding care. So I think that's an absolutely amazing way to operate. So you got into it through Aviva, through one branch, but now you've expanded. So you must be really into it now.
Yeah, we do. We've got a real passion for it. I think I've always had real passion for justice. I'm not sure if that's even the right word, but it's making sure that people get what they should get, making sure that outcomes are the right ones. Whether that's, talking to my kids and saying, what conversations have you had today? Did they end up with the right answers? And why have you been put in reflection? You need to know the reason. And so that's the same. It's the same for all of the clients that we have. I'm always thinking, if that was me, is that how I would want to be treated? If that was my family, is that how I would want them to be treated? And so every decision that's made on a daily basis, that's got to be about getting the right outcomes for people, and not us deciding what their outcomes should be. It's listening to them and saying, does this align with what you've asked us to support you with?
Yeah. It's like the mum test, isn't it? Like, would you let your mum use this service? And I think that's always a good marker.
Yeah, definitely.
So the Home Instead network, obviously I've said a few times you deliver care, but it is a specific type of care, right? Could you just dive into that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, home instead is domiciliary care. So, it's care in your own home. And that care can be anything from a minimum of 1 hour. So, that's the minimum across the network. There are some slight nuances with that. So, as a service, we sell an hour of care. We believe in that hour of care. We know that there are providers who offer 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, etc. And that isn't our base level of service. However, we are open to offering 45 minutes or half an hour if it fits in a larger package of care. So, our core service is based on the hour because it's relationship led. So the hour allows that time to build a trusted relationship with the carer. Consistency is key as well. So that's a big selling point for Home Instead. We match clients to care pros. We try and match it on personality, but the main match that we will always offer is that the care pro has the necessary skills to be able to deliver the care. And one thing that we discuss within our group is that we want our care pros to be like a chameleon. So that care pro doesn't have to get on with every single person that they meet, but they need to adapt to what that person needs on that day. So when you cross that threshold into somebody's home, you need to become what that person needs you to be on that day. So with an hour of care as well, there's no rushing. There's time to build a relationship with the individual that you're looking after, learn their likes, their dislikes, their specific nuances, and that can't be done with a short visit. There's no time to build that trust. One of the other things that we're really passionate about at Home Instead is introducing a care pro to a client before they have their initial visit. So that's going to, it could be just a quick, dependent on the client and what they need. Some clients will need more reassurance, so it'll be a longer introduction visit of the care pro. Maybe sit down, have a cup of tea, have a biscuit, have a chat, get to know the clients. Other times it might simply be a 10-minute on the doorstep. This will be your care pro who's visiting you tomorrow, just so that you know their face and you can be aware that that person will be coming to visit you in your home. So again, it's building the trust. We don't send strangers. We don't send people who we don't trust. As well, one of the other things that Home Instead are really passionate about is shadow visits. So a shadow and an introduction are very different. An introduction is purely a hello, nice to meet you. The start of the building of the relationship with that person. Trust is a huge thing when you're letting someone into your own home, and that person could eventually be delivering personal, intimate care. So you don't want that person to show up on day one and that's, a shock for both of you. You want to build the relationship, build the trust and take it from there. So a shadow visit is different in that if there's complex care that needs to be delivered, we'll always provide a shadow visit. So that's a care pro shadowing. So following the care of an experienced care pro in that visit so they can learn how that client likes the care to be delivered, what the specifics are of that process to follow with that specific client.
So that's really cool. I mean, I'll I'll be completely honest as well. My family were home instead clients. Now, it wasn't one of your home insteads, but I know that all the home insteads across the country seem to be living that value as well. And what I really liked about it, particularly when my family used it, was we were able to keep Grandad independent for longer. And he was at home until the point where he couldn't be at home. So that was really valuable for us. And I think it was really valuable for him as well. And I think that's one of the real advantages of domiciliary care, right? Is you get to be at home.
Yeah, absolutely. It's where you feel comfortable, isn't it?
100%. And I know, he went into residential care eventually, and that was because he absolutely needed to. And it was a fantastic home. But there was a change in him when he went residential. And I think it sort of talks about that comfortable feeling that you just mentioned, keeping someone at home, keeping them independent. We all want to be at home, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love being at home. I'm a proper home bird. If ever I need care, I would absolutely be looking for a company like Home Instead because it is that independence. It's that we don't want to strip away independence and we don't want to remove dignity. All of our care plans, it's strengths based. So it's saying what can the person do for themselves and what might they need some support with, or at the very extreme, what do we need to do for them? So even something as simple as brushing teeth, I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues the other day about somebody's needs for oral care. And so, are they able to fully brush the teeth themselves, or do they need a mechanical support of us being able to? And mechanical sounds awful, but that's the terminology that we were using in that conversation. Do they need a mechanical support of someone to put toothpaste on a toothbrush and
Yeah.
pass it to them, and then they're able to do that process themselves? So it's kind of going from, are they fully independent? Do they need some support to do the task? Or at the very extreme, are we doing that task for them? Is it a prompt? Do they need just a simple reminder to brush the teeth? And then they think, oh, yes, I know how to do that. And so that person centered care and that strength based care planning, it's so important because what you don't want, or you might want, is someone coming and brushing your teeth for you. But ultimately, we want to remain independent for as long as possible. And some of us have lazy days and we might want people to do things for us. But realistically, the longer that you can remain independent, the longer life you're going to have because you're up, mobile, thinking. It's all of those things that keep us living longer, happier lives.
Yeah. And, that is the most important thing, right? Is longer and happier lives. I was speaking to a care professional a little while ago, and they said, care is about adding life to years, not years to life. And I think that's,
That's
that's
a lovely way of putting it.
that's what I thought as well. And I thought, how can, and, his service lived that. And I thought, how can my service as Prepare for Care live that? And, but I think it's, I'm not going too far to say that the way that you operate Home Instead, with the introduction of the care pro. So it's not just someone coming in, it's a friend almost, that is right. That's adding the life to the years.
It is, absolutely. There are professional boundaries, which is a policy and a topic that comes up on a almost daily basis. Yes, we do want our care pros to form trusting and loving relationships, but within parameters. We all know about situations where things like that can go the wrong way, where potentially older, vulnerable people do end up being abused, and that's something that we always need to safeguard against. So it's finding the kind of care pro who really wants to do the right thing, but within the parameters of policy and process. And this is again, you can see my quality head coming into the conversation. It's kind of swerving it away from, yeah, you want them to become friends. Yeah, friends, but with parameters.
Friends with boundaries.
Yeah, friends with boundaries within the professional boundaries policy, absolutely.
Well, I think, the way you refer to your caregivers and the people who are doing the job as care pros, right? It's kind
Yeah.
of, it's embedded from the start. They're care professionals rather than I don't want to belittle anyone, rather than just a carer. You are adding that professional element to that person's role.
Yeah, ultimately, the people that we're providing, they are professionals. It is a profession, and they've got more training than a lot of other sort of other industries. The type of training that's delivered is really crucial. It's adding health to people's lives as well. So, medication support. There's a lot of trust that needs to go with medication support. Administering medication, it's a complex task sometimes. Applying creams, these are things that you might think are low level tasks, but actually um, they're adding to people's lives. Like we've said, you want to add life to years, not years to life. If you've got poor skin integrity, or if you've got poor health that's not being managed by medication, these are things that our care pros can come and do, but they're not just doing it, they're trained and competent. And that gives them a real sense of pride as well, because they think of themselves as professionals.
Yeah, and I think sort of as we sort of go through the world at the moment, and particularly situations here in the UK, you know, there is going to be a shift towards keeping people independent, keeping them in their own community, and delivering care where possible in the home. Um, so I think care professionals, they will become more and more recognised as vital parts of our our adult social care system, which perhaps they don't get recognised at the moment. But that's
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
helicopter view.
I think that the challenges that people have when it comes to seeing a carer coming in, there is the concept that there's a stigma around the panorama episodes where carers, people, and the title itself, the word care is in the role, is in
Mm,
their title, carers. So we were seeing carers on the television on the Winterbourne panorama episode where that wasn't caring individuals. And so there is always that risk if you're letting somebody into your home, you've got to really trust that person. And so we know at Home Instead that everyone that we employ, we hire them to be able to do the job because they've got compassionate hearts. We don't, we've got high standards of who we'll take on. And if we don't feel in the interview process that that person fits our standards, then we will politely say, this isn't quite the role for you. We've taken on carers from other providers before, and when they come to us, they've learned bad habits. Sometimes bad habits are hard to break and sometimes impossible to break. So again, if we feel that that person isn't, they think, well, I know care because I've been in care for 15 years. I've cared for 15 years, and I was always allowed to do that in my last job. And that's something that when we hear that, we think, well, you've already learned bad habits, so it's going to be either hard to break them or impossible. And so we always try our best. We've got our own strict training, and we will always give people the time to bring them up to our standards. But sometimes it just won't work out. But being a carer, it's either in you or it isn't. And I think the ones that it's in their hearts, it's in their minds, and a lot of people who come to us, they've looked after their own family members as well, and so they've
yeah.
had good experience of being a carer, but never fully understanding what it means to be a professional carer. And so, again, with the medication competencies, yeah, you can support your own family in giving medication, and you can do covert medication with your own family. And when you come to a professional company like Home Instead, there are rules. And again, coming back to caring within parameters, it's that we want the people who've got the compassion in the hearts, but they're able to pick up the skills and take those into people's homes.
Yeah, and I think that's reassuring, that a company like yourselves operates in that we don't just need to fill a gap. We need to fill our team with the right people. And again, it's because they're going home. They're going to someone's house, right? So it's really lovely to hear, and I think a lot of people can take a lot of peace from that, because I think there's a trend at the moment in the UK that people are having to source care themselves, rather than perhaps previously a lot of people assumed it was the local authority, or they assumed it was the NHS, and actually so a lot of people get left high and dry, and so they're having to source their own care. Are you seeing a lot more people coming directly to your door?
The majority of our client base is private funded. One of the things that's always a really uncomfortable conversation that we have to have is around cost. And it's that difference between expensive care and cheap care.
Mm.
And I will always advocate for the higher cost of care will get you the best results. Local authorities will generally only pay, I'm thinking we've been asked if we'll take £21, and we'll sort of refer them to the Home Care Association, do a safe cost of care um, project every year where they analyze how much the lowest cost of care can be with it still being safe. And so I think this year it was around £32.40,
Okay.
possibly. You can fact check me on that one. But the Home Care Association, they do the work for individuals who are sourcing care. So the information isn't for care providers to say your prices are right, your prices are wrong. It's for individuals who are sourcing care. It's for them to have a benchmark of that's safe and anything under that is unsafe. And so when local authorities are asking providers like us, we pay you £25 an hour, £21 an hour, and we're saying absolutely not, because we've got the pressures, governments put up the national insurance, the cost of living that's impacting how we're pricing our care. And so we'll squeeze as much as we can where we can, but ultimately, if you want good quality care, you do need to pay a decent price, and that price will be, as per Home Care Association's project, at least £32.14. And that's because safe providers will have the insurance, they'll have the overheads of CQC registration. A lot of the cost goes into training, so good training. And it's not just your mandatory training either. So we will always try and get people trained to the highest level. If there's any element of nursing, so that will come at an extra cost as well. Nursing care is something that Home Instead can do, as long as it's delegated healthcare, which is a whole other topic, one for another day maybe. But that's again, in the continuity of care that you can have from a good quality provider, they can take you from an hour of care all the way up to live-in care and end of life care, palliative care. And so, what most families want is a smooth transition through those stages. They want to be able to come to a provider who they can start at maybe an hour of companionship or a shopping visit, or if it's at the level where somebody does need personal care, that's a base level, an hour or two a week, up to 4 hours a day, up to living care, night visits, respite care, everything and above. Care pros can go on holidays with clients if that's a need that they have. So I know that that's something that some providers just won't do. Some providers won't even entertain the idea of having somebody in a hoist or
Yeah.
complex moving and handling. But we're willing to take it all on.
So it sounds like you really do run the gambit of the services that you offer. So we're going from really low intervention to what is one of the most difficult times of someone's life, right? And
Yeah,
um, and that can all be provided at home.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Amazing.
that's the ultimate, isn't it? Is that the person you want to be able to leave the house at some point, but all of the things that you would have had to go into a hospital or into a care home to have provided, now it can be provided at home. There's even for sort of moving and handling in terms of hoisting, there are ways that people can just have one carer to hoist them, whereas it's considered that you would need two, but there are some times that it can just be a single person hoisting. So again, that reduces the cost, and we'll always consider that with someone. If a discharge team have considered it has to be a double up, and we'll go out and assess and say, well, we can save you a load of money here because actually we're able to do it just as one. Not in every case, but in some.
That's brilliant. And one thing I'm just going to roll back to is because I always like to try and find a top tip for anybody who's for searching for care for a loved one. The Home Care Association. So they've said we've got a price of what is safe care. Now, for me, that's an amazing benchmark because I don't want to speak for everyone in the world here, but surely if you're putting a loved one in care, you want the best for them. So there you can go to the home home care association, and you can see what they declare
Yeah,
is
absolutely. So they do this every year so that you can benchmark what the costs are. And again, it's an uncomfortable conversation to have with people, and especially when people have had care from home instead, and then they're a funded package, and then the people who are in control of their money are saying, can you provide this care for less? And ultimately, we try our best to reduce it to the minimum that we can afford to reduce it to. There are some times, especially if a client's been with us for years, we'll make huge allowances for. So if we've looked after somebody for, 8, 10 years and they've had all of their care journey with us, we will try our hardest to make sure that they're not paying a huge amount at the most critical part of them needing more care. But realistically, care needs will always go up. And so we want to be able to bring the cost down for families who've been with us for years and years, and then they're at their most fragile, really. You don't want to add that extra cost. But I think that it is that for families to be able to know within any service that they're buying care from, you don't want any hidden costs.
yeah,
You want
you want
everything
that
to be transparent.
transparency.
Yeah. You want to know that that service has the same values as you. You want to see your own qualities in that service, and you kind of, it's a bit of tire kicking in the beginning, isn't it? So it's that you ring up a company, you ultimately just want to know the price, but what you want to know is then, are you the right match for what we are? And if the price matches, fantastic. If the price doesn't match, there are ways that you can consider looking at additional funding. So there's the attendance allowance that can be considered. We always recommend that you go through your local authority to get that needs assessment. And then that's external to us. The local authority will do their needs assessment, which is separate to our assessment. Our assessment is a strength based assessment on what you can do. It doesn't consider funding. That's for you to decide if home is that are right for you.
That's really nice though that you're focused on the service. The service that you're delivering is agnostic to perhaps the financial situation
Yeah.
of the family, and I think that's the fairest way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone deserves the best care. It's just that some people unfortunately can't afford the service that you would want them to be able to afford.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, part of the Prepare for Care platform, I'll put my own little plug in here, is that we will make sure that people are able to make the right decisions for them when they are searching care, because there is a myriad of options out there, and there's a lot of things that people don't consider or haven't even thought about might be able to use to help them afford the most appropriate care. But it always comes down to appropriateness, right? I think perhaps I would want the best care in the world for my parents, but I, I don't think I can afford to pay for that. So you have to make those difficult decisions and difficult choices, right? Of appropriateness and affordability. But it's nice to have you guys as a care provider being agnostic, saying, actually, this is the care package that needs to be delivered to get the best result.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Home Care Association, again, coming around to that, is that they're telling you that that is the minimum for safe care. And so anything on top of that is extra. So Home Instead does do extra to other service providers. And that's why generally it will be slightly higher priced than the Home Care Association, because it's around the clock care, it's the reassurance for families as well. So I know some care providers, they run on a shoestring, they run with one person in an office being the responsible person for hundreds of clients and hundreds of care pros. And that just isn't, it's not reasonable for any one person to manage. So we have, a full team of people in every office, and we make sure that they're trained, competent, confident. That's a huge part of being able to be in the care industry as well. It's being able to know that you're confident in what you're telling people. And so we're confident that we can be fully transparent. We've got compassionate carers that are available. We've got full flexibility. And so you might come on board with us for 1 hour, but we know that if you needed living care the next day, we can arrange that. You don't need to worry about it. Let us take care of it.
Yeah. And it's that approach, hey, that I know you mentioned that, there are premiums to it, but from personal family experience, we found that Home Instead was a very reasonably priced service, and that service is reflected in the hour visit. We could have had people go in for 15 minutes to see granddad. However, what is that? Would they get the jobs completed? Will he be comfortable with that person in his house on multiple occasions when they dip in and out? And often it might not be the same person, right? You know, they're going geographically who's closest to that house at that point. Whereas a Home Instead doesn't operate like that. And I think, you know, that is why it is still a very reasonable service for the cost.
Yeah, absolutely. The selling point that I find it is the continuity of care, the consistency, and the fact that it is strength based. So we've all heard the stories about 15-minute calls. It's kind of rushed care. There's no dignity in it. If the person isn't ready to have personal care, it's forced upon them. That isn't how you would want your loved ones to be treated. A sandwich is thrown at them towards the end of the visit. Next person comes in. If the sandwich hasn't been eaten, it's in the bin. It's unfortunately the same case when people go into hospital. We always hear about our clients that they're not eating, they're not taking the medication because maybe the hospital ward don't understand that that person's forgotten how to use cutlery, or that person is a vegetarian. You put a meat meal in front of them. So when we have clients who go into hospital, part of what we always offer as well is that we want that good transition for them going into hospital. So we'll be speaking to the paramedic team, speaking to the ward, and filling them in on that information that maybe the client, or if they haven't got close family, that they can't do. So that's an extra that you would get from home instead, just as a standard. So we really do consider that individual. And I think before in the conversation, talking about the carers becoming friends within parameters, it is that they care so much about the clients that they're seeing because they've seen them regularly, built that relationship with them. The clients do see them as family and they want them to advocate for them. So it's an all round service.
Yeah, and I don't think we can stress that enough. I don't want to parrot ourselves as we go on through this episode, but it is really important that families are making the choice of the life they want their loved one to continue to live. Um, on that, in sort of this changing world, and we talk about remaining independent. There's a lot of technology that's out there now, right? That is making it easier for people to stay independent for longer.
Yeah, I mean, technology in itself it's everywhere now. You can't look around a room without seeing technology. So it's something that I've grown up with. I'm sure you've grown up with. And so to implement it into the business, for my side of the business, the quality and ensuring that things going down the rabbit holes, it's easy to do with technology because all of our care plans are digital. And
Okay.
so that's one way that technology is really enhancing care is that I think previously, if it was on paper care plans, anytime an update needed to happen, you'd have to handwrite or type and then take it to somebody's house. But now you can have app access to care plans. Family members, so our Home Instead family members have access to an app that they can see what support their family members having. So that's really useful and it's that reassurance. So that's tech enabled care for me. It's the family can check the app maybe on the lunch break and say, mum's had a medication, fantastic, that's a relief for me. Oh, dad's had a home cooked meal today, that's fantastic, that's a relief for me. So I think that the two things, that trust and reassurance that you can get from a really good care provider, that's enabled by the technology that's available now.
Yeah.
Updates can happen on the spot. New medication can go straight onto a care plan through digital care planning. Um, Through our digital care plan systems, there's also data and access tag-ons. So that's where I spend the majority of my time at work. It's looking through the data and using data to drive decisions. So auditing, that's as standard. A good care company is constantly auditing.
Yeah.
And so they're picking up on issues that are happening in the moment And then they've also got a safety net for things if they're not picked up. So if there is an incident or a slip, trip, fall, or somebody's skin isn't looking how it should do, our care pros will send an alert through to the office, and that's in real time. So the office team can pick up on that and start to put the steps in motion to potentially ring the GP and look into, is the cream the right one? Are we applying it as we should be? The care pros for creams have got a competency in that as well. So they've done a full skin integrity course to make sure that what they're doing is correct. Um, the training and support as well. So a lot of that's done using technology to enable it. So training can happen in a classroom, but a lot of the time now there's e-learning.
Yeah.
So e-learning can be done from the comfort of your own home via your phone, or a tablet or a laptop, however you want to interact with that e-learning. So you can always be updating your knowledge on the go.
Yeah, I think the way that you've obviously spoke there about how you've embraced technology and data is something that I think if I was a family, I would want to see these interventions in a care provider when I was looking for one, because it's like you say, it's data from a with your quality hat on. You are very much in real time seeing what is happening out there, with your care pros who are dispersed. They are, for you guys, over quite a large section of the country. So it's really important. And I think as well, from a family's point of view, everything's coming through on an app. It keeps you guys accountable, right? It holds you to account as well.
Yeah, it can work both ways. We have had family members, and this is another really interesting area of care, is that we always try and make sure that the individual, the client's voice is the loudest. And it's when family believe that their voice should be the loudest. And so, we don't follow a task-based care approach. It's an outcomes based. So whatever the client wants is the most important. So if the client wants to sit and chat rather than having a shower, that's what the client should get. And so if the family then see on the app, "Oh, he's not had a shower," and then they ring in the office and say, "Why hasn't dad had a shower?" "What do you mean you can't force him in the shower?" And so it's balancing the individual's rights with what the family wants. So the app's fantastic, and 99% of the time, these are really reassured that their loved one is getting the care that they need in the right way and that they're happy.
That's part of being independent, right? Is you're empowering the individual to make their decisions. Now, they don't have to be the right decisions. Maybe they do need a shower. We all know people who perhaps do need a shower, but they're living by their will there, and they say, no, let's have a chat, and that's independence, right? Because independence is not getting it right every time. It's being allowed to make the wrong decision as well. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
power in that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then the tech enablement of that as well is that the task planning, it would have shower task essential. And then there would be a report that shows all of the essential tasks that haven't happened. And so if you see a pattern, well, actually, John has had no showers this week, but what John has wanted is for the carer to chat with him. And then it opens up a conversation around, well, John, you need to have a shower at some point. When are we going to fit that in? We know you love a chat with your care pros, so let's fit it in at a different point. Do you want to add on a different care visit where we can fit in your shower and then you still get your lovely chat with your carers? So the tech there and the data, it's data driven conversations, isn't it?
Well, and that is the biggest argument for finding a tech-enabled carer, right? You know, because previously those things would be on notes and they could get lost and interpreted wrong, and patterns are harder to spot. So I'm excited for the way that tech is getting embedded in care.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always the trends, the patterns, and that data, you can use that. So I was having a conversation yesterday with someone about over and under runs. So again, home instead, we sell an hour of care because that's what we feel is the bare minimum to build a relationship with someone. If a visit's running over, normally it's because the client themselves would prefer to have a conversation than have all of these tasks that are on the app for the carer to do. The visit runs over and then it's at a further cost. So it's saying, well, do we need all of these tasks on? or is actually the outcome that the client wants, is that they don't want the hoovering every day and emptying the bins every day and all of these things that maybe family have decided or the client thought that they wanted when they set the care package up. It's really using that data to say, well, why is the care running over the hour when actually could we tweak it a bit and get it right for the client, but also make sure that we're meeting their needs as well? Or if the visit's running under, that's not the service that we offer. We say, it's a minimum of an hour. So if the client's constantly saying, I've 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 had enough of you, can you go away, please? That's the client's choice, but we'd need to be going and saying to the client, you're paying for an hour, so let's make sure that we can try and get something out of that time that you're actually losing.
Yeah, and I think sticking to that as well is it's just so important because actually mum, dad, grandma, granddad, whoever they might be, might might not want any more interaction, but there's still little bits that the care pro can do right to make sure that they are delivering the full service.
Yeah. But equally, if the client is funding their own care and they're saying, it's my decision, I'll pay for the hour, but I do want you to leave me alone at this point. I have had enough for today. Then that's their choice and we've got to respect that.
The independence again, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's always got to be listening to the client, what they want. It can't be about what we think that they want. It's got to come from them.
That's amazing. So I want to sort of start bringing things to a close, but if you had to speak to a family now and they were looking for care, what would be some top tips for families who are considering choosing a care provider?
So it's a really tricky one. I mean, I would love for all of our services to be outstanding CQC registered, but unfortunately, we haven't had a inspection in office to be able to evidence that. But one of the things that you should be ideally looking at is outstanding care. So if a company's registered with CQC, if they're outstanding, you know that the CQC have gone and lifted up all the rocks and they found absolutely nothing wrong. And they found that that service is delivering on safe care, effective care, responsive care, etc. And that is what I would recommend. Now, that CQC rating is a snapshot of time, but you can pretty much trust that that CQC rating is across the board for that care company if they're outstanding. All of our services are good. And we think, well, good is good enough, but we would love to be outstanding. And so we believe that we're outstanding. We just need CQC to come and we can evidence that to them to get that rating. So I think for families looking, good and outstanding care providers are the way to go. You'll be able to tell if they are inadequate or requires improvement. So definitely stay well away from anyone who doesn't have at least a good rating from CQC. The care providers realistically have to have that CQC registration to be able to provide personal care. So again, avoid anyone who doesn't have that registration. And then it comes down to the fundamentals of the caring element. So you can view these things on the CQC website as well. So there is the Chloe's, the key lines of inquiry. So caring is one of them, but caring across the board in care should be a standard. So if you speak to a care company and you just get a vibe on the phone that they don't care, put the phone down, pick it up and try another one. I can vouch for having done some mystery shopping that there are care providers out there who really don't care. So when I call other companies to sort of do a bit of benchmarking myself to see is my team as responsive as I'd like them to be and are other care providers actually pipping us, 99% of the time, the care companies that I speak to don't fill me with confidence. So you will know from when you pick up the phone and you have that conversation, that fact finding conversation about your loved one and what their needs are. Our job is to listen. So our job isn't to tell you what you need. It's for us to listen to your story and us to listen to what you are at, in that moment, what your biggest pain point is, and it's for us to solve that with you and for you. So that's where we really enjoy our role is when we get a family who have come to us at crisis point and we're able to help.
It's interesting you say about you can tell straight away if people care or not. So you've got to look out for that, right? And also are they talking about the person who needs care in a way that suggests that they're going to be a friend to that person? Are they going to care about that person? I've also done a little bit of mystery shopping, and sometimes it takes a while before we talk about the individual.
And they should be, like I've said the whole way through, their voice is the loudest. So as much as family are generally the ones ringing up for care, it doesn't tend to be the individual themselves ringing up and saying, "Oh, I need some help, I need some support." It's generally a family member who's saying, "I need to get support for this person." One of the first things that we'll do is say, "We need this person to accept the support. We can't force it on them." And then it's asking, well, what does that person want? Yes, you've got a voice in what you think they want, but what does that person need? What does their situation look like? And then let's work from there.
Yeah, it comes back to person-centered care, doesn't it? It's a phrase that gets used a lot in the care ecosystem, but you need to find somebody who really lives the person-centered element of care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to throw one at you now because I asked you to come armed with a cool story from the world of care.
I don't know about a cool story. I mean, my stories always tend to be around sort of quality, which isn't very cool,
Quality's cool. I
and
think a lot of
data
people will be
driven
reassured
things.
by that.
My magical moment story, which it's a very recent one because when I was sort of preparing to have this conversation with you, and thank you for the pointers, I was thinking, well, what's really made me stop and think about my role? And we've worked closely with a lady in Doncaster called Mary Beardsley, who actually set up the Admiral service. So the Admiral nurses,
Okay.
they've been disbanded now in Doncaster, which is really upsetting and frustrating for families, but they were sort of the direct point of where you could access support for families and individuals when there's been a diagnosis of dementia.
Yeah.
So Mary's been a real support for us, especially in the Doncaster office, which was our first. So we've actually asked her to come and do some training sessions with our key players, so our office staff, across the group of 5 officers. So we're bringing people together to spend some time with Mary, who is an oracle around dementia care. And she's asked people to bring case studies. And then we've worked in groups to say, what would you do? What do you think we could do to try and solve the problem? Because as we know in care, there's often a problem that needs solving. And you can't work alone. You've got to speak to your colleagues, and sometimes you need to speak to external parties. And so, one thing that I'm always really passionate about is making sure that people are trained as best as they can be to deal with every situation. So, Mary has done sessions for our key players, and a few of them have got personal experience of dementia in their families. So, the session, the most recent one that I was at, 2 of our key players brought personal stories about their dads and situations that they were struggling with. So one of them is the classic of the dad's no longer got his driving license and he's got an obsession with getting from A to B. And so she was saying, I've tried hiring a mobility scooter. I've tried to get him to ride a bike. And so everyone in the room, all of our key players were saying, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And I was sitting back and watching this happen, and I was just thinking, wow, that's it. That's the magic in what we do is that we've got an expert in the room in Mary, but Mary isn't giving the answers. She's saying to you, to everyone in the room, what would you guys do? Give advice to each other. No one's got the answer, but by working together, you can get somewhere closer to the answer. And that's it. It's the pride that I felt in that moment, listening to my colleagues, key players from offices, having those conversations and listening to how much they know. Sometimes you don't know how much someone knows until they start talking. And I was just, yeah, filled with pride.
That's amazing. And that circles back really neatly for the end of a podcast. That circles back to you're picking the right people in your recruitment process, right? You said we don't take on everyone. And you've clearly in that session gone, yeah, we picked the right people here.
Yeah. What a feeling as well, genuinely sitting there and looking at everyone, almost welling up, but just filled with pride and thinking, these are the people that I would trust to solve the problems.
It is cool when you see the fruits of your work, right? And I think with that there, that's a great place for us to end. But what we have forgot is we're all about, and we've mentioned it a few times, there's difficult decisions and difficult conversations to be had when you're selecting care. I think over a cuppa and some biscuits. So, Zoe, when we have our difficult conversations about care, what biscuits are you bringing?
So I'm bringing the best of all the biscuits, a chocolate hobnob.
100% agreed. There's
Can't beat it.
every time I ask the question, I have to, be very nice about the
Diplomatic.
answer. But the answer is chocolate hotmo every time.
It is, absolutely. A hobnob in its own right is fantastic, but cover it with chocolate.
Job done. Well, the correct answer, the final answer, Zoe, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Obviously, Homestead are a fantastic company that live their values. And I think you've demonstrated that today in that you also embody those values as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.